Hi guys, so Feud was very full of drama last night, let's say that. Yeah, we actually have this big episode. Even though it focuses on Bette somewhat, it's mostly about Joan Crawford and how her career basically kind of had a downfall. So let's start from the beginning. So the production of Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte is continuing. And as we saw in the last episode, Bette and Aldrich are kind of having their romance rekindled a little bit. Mostly because Aldrich and his wife are divorcing. So Betty's kind of having all these... She has demands, like she's actually a producer for the film. And she really makes a lot of changes to the script throughout the episode. And in the meanwhile, she's having an affair with Aldrich, so this makes Joan really, really angry. And if Joan gets angry, you will not like what happens next. So she's dealing with that, and she is kind of going through a crisis where she feels like she's being forgotten again, like even more than she was. She's sitting alone in her hotel room, and Bette is having all these people over in her room, and it's kind of like Betty's the more likable, sociable person. So she's kind of dealing with seeing Bette like that, and she doesn't really want to accept that. But anyway, so let's talk about something interesting in this episode. There was a point when the production crew were all on location, and Joan is in her trailer. She was sleeping, and she wakes up, and she finds that everybody is gone. She has been abandoned, which is actually the name of this episode. So she goes to Betty's room, and she is furious that they all forgot about her. And I feel like this is a really big metaphor for basically how her life is going right now. Like, she feels she's being forgotten in general, and to literally be forgotten, it's just an awful feeling. So she's confronting Bette about this, and we actually learned that Bette had a misfortune when she auditioned when she was 22 years old. She auditioned, I think it was for Jack Warner, I can't remember. But she auditioned, and she was told that she wasn't pretty enough, and she wasn't pretty like Joan Crawford. So that was actually kind of a little spark for their feud to come. So, there's a point when Bette is telling Joan, like, how was it to be beautiful and to have everyone adore her because of her beauty? And Joan is basically like, it wasn't enough. And then she asks Bette, what was it like to have all the talent and to have people admire her for that? And Bette replies with the same, it wasn't enough. I really like that scene because it says something about not just Hollywood, but the world, how we're seen. We're either judged by how we look or what we can do. Oftentimes, especially in Hollywood, it's mostly about the look. I mean, not that there isn't focus on talent, but especially back then, it was if you had the look. So I really like that scene. It spoke volumes about Hollywood and the world, and it still goes on today even. And yeah, you have to have talent, no doubt, but it's also the effort you put into everything that should really be what's judged. That how hard you work. Like, if you work hard and they say no to you just because your nose is weird or something, that's not right. So I really love that scene. I think they really got that on the dot there. Sorry, just making a point there. So, in the episode, Joan is continuously furious about the changes being made to the script because they're giving her less and less dialogue. She had a monologue and they took that out. And Bette is actually trying to make creative choices, saying, oh, the scene is too long, or they don't need this. Whether it was really despite Joan or not, that's up for debate, but... So Joan is just furious. And at one point, she goes to the hospital, mainly to slow down production, in a way to spite them. So, I honestly, like, some things I didn't catch in this episode, if she actually was diagnosed with pneumonia or she just had symptoms of pneumonia. I'm not positive on that. So that was kind of her reason for all the delayed production. And at one point she goes back to filming her scenes. She enters in a wheelchair, and the line that Bette says is like, oh, she thinks we're still filming the last film. Which, as you know, and whatever happened to Baby Jane, Joan was in the wheelchair. So it's just kind of a funny moment there. So Joan is doing her scene, and she doesn't like the changes that Bette keeps doing, or she doesn't like it when she pipes in and stops her scene. And it's just really adding fuel to the already giant fire that is going on. And Joan just continues to feign illness, or even if she has a little bit of illness, she's blowing it out of proportion. And it just gets really intense with that going on. So at one point, it gets too intense where they decide to recast Joan. And if you look up Hush, 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 Sweet Charlotte, you will see that Joan is not in the movie. She was actually replaced by Olivia de Havilland, who is Bette Davis's friend, was Bette Davis's friend. Sometimes I forget that the stories were real. So, yeah, she takes her role, and it basically really pisses off Joan. And she throws a vase at Mamacita, well, in her direction anyway. I don't think she really intended to hit her, but Mamacita gets really mad, and she told her in the last episode, if you throw something at my head again, I'm out. So she left. And that scene, like, even though I felt a little bad for Joan because Mamacita was really the only one who kind of understood her, and she really took a lot from her. So for her to leave, that really just said a lot. Like, that's how bad things had gotten. So, because Joan did all of these things, slowed down production, and constantly was struggling with trying to keep her role prominent in the film, that's kind of what her downfall was. And her career kind of ended from there, I guess. I haven't really looked up if she did much after that, but it sounds like she did not, so... Oh, Hollywood. And there was actually an interesting scene where Pauline goes to visit Joan because there's kind of a lawsuit kind of going around. If Joan's not actually sick, they could sue her for all the delayed production and all the money that they've lost. And she talks to the doctor, and the doctor mentions how Joan tried to seduce him. And Pauline is really kind of telling Joan off, and the whole business, really, she really gets her say in that. Like, at one point she says, I don't know if this town attracts narcissists or creates them. And I really like that line. I've learned and I've seen that Hollywood is very phony, and almost the whole city of LA is phony. Like, I'm not saying everybody is, just there is a phoniness to it, because you kind of have to be a different person from who you are sometimes to get into the business. You have to be this different person to the audience, and Hollywood is just, it's become quite it's a monster. Not the most evil monster, but it really can change you, and not always for the better. I think it's a little better today, like way back in the decades. It was really, there was a lot going on that we didn't know, and this show is really showing us the truth about what's going on behind the scenes, what happened that we didn't see. And there are still things today that we don't really know what's going on. So I really like the show is kind of pointing that out. It doesn't just say about things that were going on then, but it asks us to look at today, like, what's going on today? Do we really know? And you can't always trust the media because they kind of blow things out of proportion or they lie. And it's just really, it's a little crazy right now, let's just say that. So I really like the show, not just because it's showing us the feud, but because it's really getting us to look at what Hollywood really is, what the world really is, and who people really are. Like, my favorite characters from the show aren't Joan and Bette, but rather Pauline and Mamacita, because they know the truth and they are not afraid to point it out. And they just really know what's going on. So I really like their characters in that respect. Oh, yeah. It was definitely a drama-filled show, and we only have one more episode left. Can you believe that? I know it's only 8 episodes, but it just goes by so fast. Alright, well, I'll see you guys for the finale. Wow, finale. Can't believe it. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will talk to you later. Bye!